Hey, everybody, welcome back. Welcome back. Thrilled that you're here. Stick around. We've got a great panel for you. Here is the official introduction. Think writing a book will make you rich overnight? Think again. The path from penning a manuscript to becoming a successful author is filled with challenges and surprises, some fantastic and some not so much. Join us today as we explore the realities of being a business author. I met these talented authors through a Kindle cross promotion campaign I organized during Amazon Prime Days earlier this year. The next campaign takes place around Black Friday. You can visit robbiesamuels.com/Black Friday to scroll through dozens of discounted business books for as low as 99 cents. Are you a business author? Sign up for a future campaign at robbiesamuels.com/Kindle promo waitlist. Again, that link is robbiesamuels.com/Kindle promo waitlist. Today's discussion will delve into the experience of being a business author and the benefits of publishing a business book. Let's hear from our amazing panelists and get their insights. With me today are three authors. Morag Barett wrote You, Me, We will Why We All Need a Friend at Work and How to Show Up as One, which has received 10 awards, including the 2023 Literary Titan Book Award. Rhodes Perry wrote Belonging at Work, Everyday Actions You Can Take to Cultivate an Inclusive Organization, which offers practical strategies and tools for creating a more inclusive and supportive workplace. It emphasizes the importance of fostering a sense of belonging and provides actionable steps for organizations to implement inclusive practices. Stacey Larsen wrote Reframing the Leadership Dance, The Secret to Finding Your Rhythm as a People Leader. This book offers a transformative approach to leadership. Drawing parallels between leadership and dancing, it guides leaders to find their unique rhythm, reducing burnout and fostering authenticity in their leadership style. Please join me in welcoming Morag, Rhodes, and Stacey. Morag, this first question, I'm going to kick it off to you just to get a little better sense of why you wrote this book. Who was the audience that you had in mind when you were writing this book?
Well, for You, Me, We and its sister book, Cultivate, we wrote that for anyone who has gone home at the end of the day, whether that's leaving the office bedroom or leaving the office and thought, I can't believe they've said or done that. Then this is the book that provides the answer. And it's all about how business gets done and and where should we be investing in our professional relationships to ensure that we are all better together.
We spend so much time at work, so I love the idea of thinking more thoughtfully about cultivating the relationships that we have there, because there's a lot of our daytime is spent at the work experience. So this is a great book for those who are looking for that kind of support. Let's go over to Rhodes. Rhodes, who did you intend as the reader for your book?
Yeah, Robbie, thanks for having me here. My ideal reader is the organizational leader. It's someone who is dreaming about a workplace culture that hasn't quite taken root and wants some strategies, wants some ideas on how to shift things and how to really transform and not change, but truly build something that has never existed before. And and it really kind of talks about the foundations of what's required before we can even experience that elusive feeling of belonging, which is having that sense of psychological safety and trust, which are really the foundation. So it was a lot of fun to write, and excited to talk more about it.
That's great. And now, Stacey, let's go to you. Tell us a little bit about your intended reader.
Thanks for having me, Robbie. I wrote Reframing the Leadership Dance for those leaders that supervise teams or are building leaders within the organization. And it seems like they're doing all the right things, but it's not necessarily working all the time. So they might be frustrated by the characters that they interact with every day, or they might be taking on too much themselves. So it's for those folks who want to do less with greater impact through more effective communication.
So these panels are randomly assigned based on your availability in your calendars, yet it seems like there was like divine intervention for the three authors that are here on this panel, because you're all focusing in one way or another in workplace culture. And I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of follow-up conversations amongst the three of you and maybe collaborations in the future. So let me go back over here to Rhodes. Rhodes, tell us a little bit about what you thought success was going to look like when you first were getting ready to publish the book. Like, not what you know now about success, but what were the metrics of success you were going to be keeping track of in the very beginning of this process? Like, how would you know that it was all going well?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I learned a lot. So the initial kind of metric of success was really listening to my publisher around kind of the average book, and that most books don't sell more than 40 copies. And that kind of freaked me out. So I was determined to sell a little bit more than 40 copies. And thankfully I did. You know, metric of success was really to kind of introduce my approach and how I support organizations in the work that I have done for the past 20 years. And really just trying to kind of synthesize it in something that was accessible. And even for an organizational leader that didn't necessarily have a budget, it was almost kind of like, if you were to do this on your own, which I don't recommend, here's some things to think through. And that was kind of one of the best calling cards. So I didn't necessarily anticipate that would be a success of just being known for kind of the approach that I take. And I appreciate that. But yeah, the early on metrics, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so like I said, I'll stand by. I learned a lot, and I'm happy to share some of those.
Yeah. So it sounds like that quote from your publisher around 40 books. And I heard the same thing. Like, if you sell 100 books, you're like, you're really doing very well. And then, there were people who were like, selling 3,000 books, and you're like, holy cow, 10,000 books in a year. You're in like the top 1%. So I think we all have a very skewed sense of what those numbers look like before we get into this. So I could see how tracking sales was a very earnest effort initially.
Yeah.
So Morag, let's come over to you. What were your early metrics that you were tracking to know whether your book was successful?
Well, I've done this dance 3 times now, and I would say each time I don't necessarily have clear metrics, because book sales aren't what's going to help me to retire. So Cultivate, one of the most basic reasons for writing Cultivate, my first book, was to stop people asking, when is the book coming out? So I was already using the IP and the concepts of the relationship ecosystem in keynotes and in our leadership programs at SkyTeam. And the book was the answer to the, so where can I learn more? And it has been hugely successful. It's been out for 10 years, and I'm actually working on the updated and expanded version that will hit shelves shortly. And then for You, Me, We, the primary goal there was to elevate my co-authors and my best friends at work, Eric Spencer and Ruby Vesely. And they and I put our heads together to go deeper into the concepts of being and having an ally at work, i.e., how do you cultivate those deep professional relationships that, yes, are great fun on the good days when everything's working well, but more importantly, you know who you can call on and who will have your back on the tough days that inevitably will impact us all. And so our measure of success is, has it done that? And in both cases, the answer is yes. It's worked as a calling card. It's resulted in invitations to come and bring these concepts to teams, organizations, and events. And so I'm celebrating both of them. But as Rhodes said, there's a lot of learning along the way.
There is. It's hard to see around the corner when you're first going down a path. So Stacey, what about you? Tell us a little bit about, as you were thinking about the book and the success of the book, what were you going to be keeping an eye on?
Absolutely. I think I was really focused in and drawn in by the notion of the book being a prequel to people working with me. And that was a revolutionary thought for me in a book. When I first started, I started writing all the hows and all the things that I wanted people to know. And the publisher coach that worked with me was like, no. This is a prequel. What do they need to know before working with you? I think that was a really big thing that I had to keep track of throughout. And the other thing that she kept talking about was, being number one. But one of the things that I've learned from you, Robbie, is don't focus in on being number one. That's a fleeting goal. Focus in on the reviews that are going to last. And that's the biggest metric that I have watched. I have to date 61 glowing reviews that I've learned so much from. And tracking that's been transformational for me.
Well, you're leading right into my next question, Stacey, because then the initial piece that a lot of first-time authors get messages from writing coaches, from publishers, is to focus on hitting number one, whether that's Amazon number one, New York Times number one, like depends on what sort of a market you're playing in, I guess. But it sounds like your understanding or your definition of success has evolved. You've taken in more information. You've talked with me about reviews, and we're going to get more into reviews itself. But it sounds like that's shifted your thinking. What was that evolution like for you? Was it hard to let go of but I want to hit number one? Or did it just sort of feel like, oh, this makes sense. I'll hit number one if I do, but I'm really going to focus on the reviews. Like, was the shift hard for you to let go of that after hearing that message so much?
I think it was the opposite. I think the hitting number one never felt authentic to me, but it felt like the thing everyone focused in on. And so then thinking about the reviews felt a little more authentic. But then when they started coming in, and the most common theme throughout the reviews that I got was Stacey's voice really comes through. It's like talking to her. And then I knew, oh, now I know I've hit success, because that was my goal. I wanted them to know me. And if the people who know me are telling me in the review that it sounds like they're talking to me, I've hit the bullseye.
Nice. Well, we're going to circle back to you about the process you use to get those reviews, but I want to head over to Morag, because Morag, you've got multiple books under your belt. I imagine your definition of success, again, keeps evolving. How have you thought about that differently over the years? Like, is it more about the introductions you're going to get, or the media opportunities, or speaking opportunities? Like, what are you hoping for as you release a new book, and that's changed from when you first wrote that first book?
Well, the first bit is having a message worth sharing, and that's been the consistent feedback that we've had from the leaders in our programs, and like Stacey, through the reviews that we see on Amazon and other portals. But for us, as success and books have evolved, to your point, being number one on a list is a fleeting moment. And so we've shifted. It is more of a calling card. It is social proof. It is another more accessible way of understanding the message and the tools that we may bring if we're working with you as an executive coach or in a leadership program. And so it allows us to get our message out to more people more easily through that medium.
That's awesome. What about you, Rhodes? What would you add to this conversation?
Could you repeat the question, Robin?
What would you add to this conversation about like how success has evolved for you? The definition of success has evolved for you?
Yeah, I think I have two books. And so I think that the interesting thing for success for me is just as I evolve, and as kind of the processes that my company shares with the folks that we work with, is just to continue to offer up that kind of learning, and to be able to package it in a resource that people are trusting, right? Like after the first successful launch, people found Belonging at Work really accessible, to talk about a feeling in a workplace, to talk about the fact that we can nurture that, and that there's a framework to do that, kind of taking the guesswork out of something that feels like a nice to have after a business is successful, and really kind of changing that mindset of, this is an essential prerequisite for your business to succeed. And that felt really good to be able to put in the first book. And, through Stacey, like through the reviews, I agree. I find that to be so, one, it's just really affirming to hear like what the book is meaning for other people. And also it offers, those reviews offer clues about, this was really helpful, and I would really love to learn a little bit more about how power works in the workplace, or, like these little ideas where it's like, oh, okay, we do talk about that, and this is like enough, Morag, to your point of having a message worth sharing. At some point there's a moment where, okay, there's something else to be shared, and it's building off of ideas that have already been offered up to an audience that's hungry for more. And so I think like that to me is how success has evolved beyond book royalties, or how the book is going to be published, or these kind of external kind of easy to share kind of metrics of success, that to me is helpful, right? But it's more about how the work is reflected back to me. Like that to me is the ultimate sign of success, is when, if it's just one person inside of a workplace to say, this idea or this approach really gave me the language to kind of stand up for the work that I believe in, and I thank you for that. And that to me is like, that's enough to say, okay, like I'm motivated, after a couple of years where I'm just like, okay, I think I have another book in me, and I'm on that path now. So
Awesome. Stacey, it sounds like you have something you want to jump in and add.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, Rhodes, about that giving people the language and also finding it for ourselves. That was one of the things that evolved as I wrote my book, was I got more clear on what I believe about leadership, why it's different from other folks, and why, thinking of leadership as a dance can change people's actions in leadership and make it easier for them and make it more natural, right? I think before I wrote the book, I was not anywhere near as clear or concise. And now I have a more consistent message for my brand, for my offers, for my business, and with my clients.
It is true that the act of writing a book solidifies, well, if you have the right kind of supports, can really solidify the framework and the messaging and even the branding that you have for your business, which then scaffolds everything else. Like everything else makes more sense. So concepts that you had been sort of playing with, but you hadn't named, suddenly have names. Imagery gets created that helps bring it all together. People are starting to say back to you, wow, that was really easy to understand. And you're like, oh, good. Like that's what I was hoping for. Which is one of the reasons I tell people to not write their books in secret, but to include their ideal readers in the process in some form or fashion. So they're getting that sort of feedback loop, or else you might create a book that doesn't actually land or make sense or resonate. So we want to be careful of that. But when we get those reviews, it really, I think, solidifies that we were on the right path. We did the work and it landed. Stacey, you were the one who brought up reviews first. And this is I feel like reviews are now becoming a love language of mine. But I am so enthralled that people take the time to write reviews, but I know that's really hard to get them to do it. And you have, this will be some truth telling on this. I'm going to be showing people behind the scenes. There are ratings and there are written reviews on Amazon's books page. So the ratings is how many stars people gave it. On Amazon, you can rate a book without writing a written review. So you have 62 ratings and 60 reviews. What I love about that for you is the ratio is really close, which means you put a lot of effort into getting people to write those written reviews. What was that process like?
It really expanded my horizons in how to think about cultivating action for people and realizing how powerful my network is. I think in working with you, Robbie, what I've come to understand is, yes, I have a lot of people in my orbit, but I didn't realize how much they would do on my behalf. So when I sent out 400-ish emails saying, hey, I've written a book, I'm writing a book. Hey, do you want to be part of the process, and inviting them early before it was launched on Amazon? Asking them if they wanted an advance copy, asking them to play in this with me and be part of my launch, coming to a session to hear about one of the chapters and participating in that. I feel like I had 40 or 50 people come to that session, and a bunch more want the link to watch it and to find out what was going on in my book. And I was so floored and excited to have them along in the journey with me. It's way more fun than doing it alone.
Well, one of the things, because Stacey, you and I worked together on your book launch, and the process that I follow, I have authors collect the reviews in advance of the book being published, and we share the advanced reader copy. We share some prompts, and I'll give you some examples in a minute. And then we collect the reviews via a Google form. And then when the book is published, we send back their text with the instructions for how to publish it. And I have a whole reasoning behind that. But one of the things I want to mention about it is that the timing of when those early reviews come in is before the book's published, at that moment where the writer has been basically running a marathon. I mean, to get through this whole many months, if not years, process to write a book and have it to the point where the manuscript exists and it's going through formatting and it's going through final, all those final pieces, those early validations, I think it revives the author and makes them ready for the marketing piece, because the marketing piece for some is not the part they love to play in. And for others like me, I can't wait for that part. It's the only reason I want to write another book is because I get to market it. But I may be an anomaly. Morag, you've had some success. I just was pulling up your numbers for your two books. For one of your books, you've got 121 ratings and 91 reviews. That is Cultivate, your first book. And that book's been out a little while. So that means you've been getting steady reviews over time, which is also really cool, not just out of the gate. And then we've got also, let's see, I've got this other one here, the You, Me, We book. That one has 119 ratings and 109 reviews. Again, it's the percentages I wanted to acknowledge there, as well as the fact that you have over 100 written reviews. Something magical happens on Amazon. I don't know exactly what number. Someone said, is it 50 or 100? I said, maybe it's 82. I don't know. But at some point, Amazon goes, oh, people are paying attention to this book. And then they push it out for you. It's very cool to see the algorithm sort of kick into gear. What's been your approach to get a whole bunch of community support around your books?
Well, I think it goes to the heart of both books, which is all about relationships. And the mistake I made with Cultivate was trying to write it on my own. And about 6 months into that process, and maybe a chapter and a half written, I formed a book advisory board which had 6 leaders on it, 3 who knew me well and 3 who didn't, where I would send them a chapter, they would review it and edit it, everything from grammar to punctuation, and then we would get on a conference call and discuss it. And I remember the very first call, and Dale, one of the members, literally there was this silence of, okay, so what feedback do you have? And there was a stunned silence, and then Dale goes, well, was it just me or was it really boring? And I remember putting my head on the desk and laughing hysterically, because that was him being an ally to me. Turns out I write in a very dry style, and I had to go back and add stories, much like Stacey was doing. That collaborative approach made a difference. And then with Future Proof, I co-authored with Linda Sharkey, and then with You, Me, We had to bring 3 voices together. And as Stacey and Rhodes talked about, it helped shape our thinking around the concepts and how they'd evolved from Cultivate when that first came out. But in terms of translating then the writing process into reviews, we did the same as Stacey. We invited our close friends and allies to be part of the book launch team. And 350 people put their hands up to say, yes, I want an early copy, and in return, I'll write you a review. However, as you've just shared, we've got 119 reviews on You, Me, We. And so it does require putting our egos to one side and sending regular reminders and asks and requests. And to be honest, right now, letting it go, because the important thing is the book is out there and having an impact. So it isn't easy. It does require humility. It does require a process, and it doesn't just require a village. It requires a city, an army of support to help us all to be successful.
Maybe part of the way to think about the difference between a village and a city is that the systems that are in place to manage a city are much more intense than a village. And that is what we're talking about. You need a really thoughtful process to move people from raising their hand to be on a launch team, to getting the advanced reader copy and taking time to actually open the file, to writing a review and publishing a review. And I generally have said about 1/3 of the people who sign up to be on a launch team will post the review on Amazon within the sort of specific time frame you're aiming for. And usually you'll get maybe a little bit more trickling in. Stacey had about 130 people on who raised their hand, and then 60 some odd who wrote a review. That's a really good ratio. It doesn't always happen that way. Morag, did you have something more?
Yes. Well, it goes back to your earlier question about what does success look like in getting to number one on a list, because that's a fleeting moment in time. And the same goes for reviews. You can get all consumed by, I've got to get the reviews in the first week, within the first month of it going live. Whereas what Eric, Ruby, and I are focused on is the life of these books. And so given that You, Me, We, Why We All Need a Friend at Work and How to Show Up as One is relatively new, we're still looking at a 10-year horizon for how do we keep it relevant and front of mind. So to your point, getting a steady stream of reviews for us is as important and heartwarming as getting that rush on publication week or publication month.
Yes. So a strong out of the gate helps, because I've noticed that you're more likely to get reviews that you didn't ask for just out of the wild if there are already reviews in the book. Whereas if there's no reviews, it's not really happening. And just for those who are listening in, even getting over 20 written reviews will differentiate you from most people who are self-publishing, hybrid publishing, and not putting any effort in. And even traditionally published books really don't focus on reviews. They're off trying to get #1 bestseller on New York Times, but when you look on their Amazon page, they don't usually have the review count. Sometimes they have a very high rating, but the written review count is very low. And so it's tricky to get those numbers early on. So Rhodes, share a little bit with us about how you approach getting reviews for your book.
Yeah, I took a similar approach to both Stacey and Morag. I had a book launch team for both Belonging at Work and Imagine Belonging. So I won't kind of repeat those strategies. I found them to be really helpful, and surprised by the network, right, of people who were just kind of waiting to be asked for help, and that's hard for me. So definitely that piece on pushing the ego aside, or I don't know if it's ego or more just kind of like, hey, I need a little help over here. So whatever that was, I got over that pretty quickly. One of the things about keeping the book relevant that I found to be really helpful was for the first book, Belonging at Work. I was talking with my book publisher, and she has a marketing background and was giving me a zillion different things to do, and it was a little overwhelming. But one of the pieces that I presented to her, and this was pre-COVID, right? So was to do a summit on the topic. So it was called the Belonging at Work Summit. And I did that for 5 years. And a lot of the summit was featuring other thought leaders, people kind of really trying to wrap their arms around what belonging is and how it fits in within broader DEI strategies. And it was so powerful, and we launched the first summit in 2019. 2020 happened, everyone was at home, and it was, there was a lot of luck in terms of timing, but it got the book in front of so many people because that was one of the little things that we were kind of promoting amongst many other people's books. And that really got a lot of exposure. So, I would say with the way that the internet changes, who knows, with AI, we'll be all holograms at one point, delivering keynotes about our books, fun stuff like that. But just kind of like chase those out of the box ideas too, because I think that the newness or something fresh or different can really make the book come alive in different ways. And that to me was fantastic. And I'm just shy of like 200 reviews on Belonging at Work. So if folks want to check that out, please help me. But I'm almost there on that. So I don't know what happens at that point, but definitely that book has a lot of reviews because I focused in on that. That was the first book.
So what we want to do is encourage folks to write a review for you, because you have a lot of ratings, but not as many written reviews. Because that's the hard part. Because the ratings, it's like amazing to me that there are some people out there that have like 200, 500 ratings and less than 10 reviews, and I'm always like, what does that mean? Like what was the campaign they ran? They're like, hey, just go over here and click these stars. Like that's not quite the same. Here's one thing I want to say before we get off reviews. If we focused on getting reviews from likely prospects and likely referral partners, that is what builds the pipeline for the offers that come after the book, that allows us as business owners to have conversations with prospects and referral partners. There's this feeling where it's like, well, let me just ask our friends and family and colleagues and fellow authors to just like help us out. And sure, that's, to a point useful in the sense that you get some reviews coming in, but that still takes effort. That same effort could be applied re-engaging with the people in your network maybe you haven't talked to in a while, but who would be really excited. And it seems like the piece that Rhodes did was take that one step further and provide something of real value with a virtual event that allowed people to engage with each other, with the material, and sort of highlight you as the expert and the convener. So it is an out of the box, huge effort piece to do. But for those who are able to pull that off, I think it's really cool. And it goes to my next question, which was about an effective marketing strategy for selling books. That seems like a really good example of something a little bit different. Morag or Stacey, either one of you have a sort of out of the box, like what was the thing you did that led to maybe bulk book sales or maybe some sort of collaboration or some kind of event like that?
So similar to Rhodes, we did a book launch party, a virtual one. Cultivate, I didn't really have a marketing plan. I had a PR plan, which helped get articles posted in key publications. And so that elevated both my social proof, but also the visibility of the messaging. But with You, Me, We, and I think the third time around, we had learned a lot. So we had a 10-week countdown, both for the book launch team with resources that they could cut and paste and share to their own networks. We had a podcast strategy as well, having conversations like this, because you start to amplify your reach. And we had, I think, twice a week on LinkedIn, because that's the only platform we're on now, but a regular cadence of, hey, it's coming and here are some key insights. Are you facing this challenge in your career or in your team or in your organization? Then here's how You, Me, We can help. And for us as authors, it felt awkward at times because it felt like we were everywhere and it felt a little out of our comfort zone. But the messaging that we kept getting back from leaders was, yes, we keep seeing it and wow, it's powerful and it's eye-catching. And so to the extent I have a fourth book, which is more, I've got 3 sons, 3 books. I think birthing books is harder than birthing children. But to the extent we have a fourth, having that structured process, we learn each time around. But it's involving others and making it easy. That's key.
Morag, you brought something up that I want to just underscore here. You said that for the first book, you had a PR plan, not a marketing plan. And I think most people don't understand the distinction. And I often say the launch is this missing link between publishing and sort of the full on marketing, because most people think of marketing as PR. And they're jumping from publishing company to a PR firm. Like they immediately jump to that. And I'm like, why would we want to direct people to view our Amazon book sales page when there's no sales and no reviews? Like, why not make it look successful with that soft launch process and then announce it to the world? So for those who are listening, the publication date and the launch date in my book are not the same day. So I like to have 2.5, 3 weeks between the two. And that's the soft launch period that gives time for the launch team to post their reviews. And that way, by the time we announce this widely and have the launch party and all of that, and whatever articles or podcast episodes are being released around that time, we're directing all of his attention onto a book that really has visibly ways of showing the success. It's already hit number 1 if it's going to, it has sales, it's ranking really well, it's got the reviews, and other things have happened from all the efforts behind the scenes. So it's a great distinction that you could, the PR strategy has its purpose, but having the community build, but you don't do everything at once. I think I'm hearing so far from Rhodes and Morag that there is a possibility of doing 19,000 things, but you can't. And so you have to pick things that work for you or your fellow authors. Stacey, anything you'd like to add on this topic?
Just that notion of, I think it is a journey. As a first-time author, I really appreciate all the ideas that Rhodes and Morag are bringing up, because I'm going to use them later. I'm going to steal them. But it's that thinking piece around, you get to this place where, well, am I just supposed to drop in that I wrote this book when I'm talking to people? And how awkward is that? And how ego-centered does that feel? Am I selling my book? And I think where I've tried to do that and bring that up, the things that I've learned are, there's a very big difference between leading with, and by the way, I wrote a book, which feels promotional, to, one of the things you're saying is, and I talk about that in my book, and here's something that you might be interested in. It's bringing that value rather than remembering to plug your book. And then it feels more authentic. I think that's what I'm learning along the way, and choosing the PR piece is not because I just have a PR plan and I'm executing them, but that I took a moment to think about who needs my book and how would they like to consume that, and what's the easiest way to make that available to them.
On that note, I'd love to hear a little bit about how clear you were between the writing of this book and how it was going to support your business goals. So I know you work with someone who was helping you sort of craft the message in the book. How did that start to crystallize, like how it was going to lead back to other offers, other opportunities for people to engage with you? How is your thinking sort of, what was it like then, and how has that even evolved as the book is now out in the world?
Yeah, for the last couple of years, I have been working on, do I niche down? Do I focus in on one thing and change a little bit of what I've been doing as a leadership coach and as a leadership development trainer and educator? And the book was meant to help me with that, and it did. But when I started writing the book, I was not clear at all on the business piece of it, how it would fit in. And it was a little disjointed. So when I went to publish the book, you and I, Robbie, have had conversations where, what do I think about these big offers that I'm running, the courses that I'm running, the community that I have? How do they connect to the book? How do I use the launch of the book to tie it to why someone would want to join my community, and how the things in my book are connected to that, and the community and the courses as well, and the coaching that I do? How is this connected? And I think what started to happen for me is, both in my website, on my LinkedIn, in how I talk about my offers, is now more consistent and threaded between. And I'm choosing to focus on one thing to then lead people on a journey to connect to other pieces of my offers. So it feels like, this is Stacey's community of leadership. And the book is one way you can be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so are these other pieces. And so my thinking on this has evolved greatly from, I have a class over here and a book over here and that kind of thing.
I love that a book helped you kind of unify and bring everything together into a common theme. I think it often happens that even the way we think a book's going to support our business when we first start writing a book, it evolves because our thinking evolves. And so we have to be a little bit flexible about that. But it also is true, I've met so many authors who have a book and then they come to me and say, it's not helping me grow my business. And so we do a few things. We might do a relaunch because they maybe only hit publish and didn't actually launch. We might do some research calls to help them develop a new offer. So I think having the book lends a lot of credibility, but it doesn't always directly relate back to the business. And we'd like people to start thinking about that and continue thinking about that as they're writing. Morag, it sounds like for you, this was much more in line for each book that you subsequently had. That clarity got clear, the reasons why and how it develops back to the business.
Yes, I mean, it's certainly enmeshed in the work that we do. And I was just chuckling in my own head. We have a wonderful new client who literally found Cultivate down the back of their bookcase. It had fallen down there, pulls it out and goes, well, who, what? Reads it, and it's exactly what they need, or they think that's what they need in order to help move their organization forward. So it is a direct link between the book and this client engagement that just makes me smile and warms my heart. But in my closet here in the office, I also have the scrappiest of flip chart pages that also shows how the book connects to the ally mindset profile that goes with you, me, we, and how that connects to the workshop that we have about building psychological safety in high performing teams, or building self-awareness and wellness and being an ally to yourself. And we have other ideas on there, much like PR and marketing that you mentioned earlier, Robbie. Our challenge is we're not short of ideas of how to expand the connections and the ways people can consume this. What we need to do is to be able to pace it to make sure that they are all as high quality and thought out and connected between themselves. And so for us, these are a core part of the leadership programs we do, a core part of the curriculum that we will do when working as executive coaches, and of course, why we're sought out as keynote speakers to bring that concept of better together and strong professional relationships in the workplace.
Because you mentioned speaking, one of the things I loved about writing a book for my first book was I used to do these really long talks because I have 3 days of content, right? So I feel like I had to pack everything in 2 hours. But when you have a book, you can say less and let people know there's more detail or other information available in this book, and it kind of gives you permission to focus maybe deep into 1 or 2 topics, or just do the overview instead. Which at first, you don't feel like you can do that because you're like, this is the only way to communicate to them is this spoken word. And that's when also book sales become a part of the conversation for how you're negotiating fees. Let's head over to Rhodes. How clear have you been for each of your books about how it relates back to the business goals that you have?
Yeah, when I started out, I was pretty clear because I had been doing this work for at least about 15 years or so, and so I wanted to kind of, in the first book, kind of use that as a foundation for the keynote that I deliver on the power of belonging. And that was really helpful just for people to really wrap their arms around this concept, which is so powerful. And I feel like the longevity of this work it will surpass me for sure. The second book was really to kind of package, when working with leaders, the leadership development work that I do, right? So it was really great to kind of have that long form, to dial it in and then to kind of enhance what I was already offering. And this next book that I'm offering is around the executive coaching that I do. So it's about coaching belonging. And I just feel like my astrological sign is a Virgo. So I don't know if people know anything about that. Like, it's just very organized. And to me, that kind of takes some of the blank canvas that you can have in your business and trying to figure out, okay, like, how do I organize things? And, when the opportunity is before me and someone is interested in engaging with me, it's really quickly, I can almost kind of categorize them. And are they just trying to kind of learn about this concept? Are they a belonging at work kind of person? Are they in the visionary state, or are they really needing a guide? Right. And so that's been just really, really helpful. And it's certainly made designing new offers based on kind of the world that we're in right now much easier because there's so much already written, so it's really great. Yeah.
That's great. We're wrapping up here, and in a moment, we're going to ask each of our authors what advice they would give to someone who's writing a book that's helping them grow a business. And we're going to kick it off in the rag in just a moment. But first, we're going to have a quick word from our sponsor. Rag, any advice you could offer someone who's working on a book?
Yeah, form your equivalent of that book advisory board. Wherever you are in the process, you need that team around you that are celebrating you and helping you encourage and bring your concepts to life. So don't do it alone. Call us, but call your allies at work. It will make it a whole much more fun and a whole lot more successful when you do it together.
I love that. What about you, Rhodes?
I think it's going back to your first question, is really knowing why you're writing the book. Who are you writing it for? What is kind of the challenge, before that particular person or audience, and what are they saying about the problem, right? So doing that kind of research in the beginning, and as well as just kind of what are they also kind of not saying about this issue. And I feel like that piece is what could really make it a must read, outside of just kind of, I'm just describing this thing about belonging, right? But like, what are the thoughts that maybe that audience wouldn't readily share with you if you were in an initial consult. So I think that could then generate a lot of kind of clarity around what is next, and maybe also help with kind of the marketing side of things when you really know who it's for and where they hang out, whether it's virtually or publications they read, etc.
So both of you are really leaning into the idea of talking to the people who are your intended audience, engaging with them. Some of it might be formal research calls or just listening in to see what they're reading or talking about online. Also paying attention to what your clients say and why they hired you, what problems they were trying to solve when they hired you. So that's all really useful information, because I feel like sometimes us experts, we are like, well, we know what people need, and then we create something, and then the market's like, who are you? What is this? I don't need this. And we're like, so there's a missing link between like the problem that people have and they're willing to admit, and the problem they have that they really need to solve for, and they're like totally unaware. So let me bring us over to Stacey to close this section out. Tell us a little bit about any advice you have for someone who's writing a book.
I think it's about getting into the world of book publishing way before you actually want to write. I think that, joining something like your book hub or talking to other authors about how they did what they did, listening to this today, it's how do you start understanding not only what the book writing is about, but also things like what's the difference between self-publishing and going with a publisher? Where are the traps that people have fallen into? Because I'm guessing all of us have fallen into things that we wouldn't do the same way before. And even learning and thinking about who is that audience and how are you going to reach them later on. And lastly, done is better than perfect.
So Stacey was just referencing BizBook Publishing Hub. 6 times a year, I host a free virtual networking event for writers and authors to meet each other and our hub partners who are experts in helping entrepreneurs navigate the complexities of writing, editing, publishing, and marketing a business book. So you'll get to meet other people in your situation, as well as people who can give you some guidance. And when you're ready, you'll know some people you can talk to if you need some assistance getting the writing process done or the marketing process done. Speaking of marketing, I'm going to go back to Stacey. How can people find you and follow your work?
You can find me, Stacey Larsen, with an EN, EDD, at LinkedIn and at AuthenticEdge.com.
Brilliant. Rhodes, how about you?
The easiest place to find me is rhodesperry.com.
Great. And Morag?
You can find me at SkyeTeam, SkyeTeam.com. And of course, on LinkedIn, just connect with me, Morag Barett, and it will be me that replies to your messages. Thank you, Robbie.
Brilliant. We're going to put all those links in the show notes, which you'll find a link to from bizbookpublishinghub.com. You're going to find all the hub partners on there. You're going to find information about our upcoming virtual networking event for writers and authors and a link to the podcast show notes. So if you go to bizbookpublishinghub.com, you'll find all the information you need to become more connected to this world of authors and writers. Thank you to our panel for being here. This has been a wonderful conversation. Cheers all.